She gave her last $10 to a bus on Christmas Eve, but a limousine pulled up with a miracle. Snow drifted across the empty streets of Willow Ridge like silent whispers, each flake catching the reflection of cold streetlights as if the night itself wanted to glitter, if only someone were watching. But the town was still, quiet, and painfully indifferent, and for Emily Carter, the silence felt heavier than the biting winter air. She clutched her thin sweater close to her chest, blinking against the wind as she walked toward the bus shelter, her steps slow, tired, and uncertain. She was only 22, but the world had pressed the weight of a lifetime onto her young shoulders. And now, on Christmas Eve, she stood alone at a frozen bus stop with nothing but a crumpled $10 bill, her last $10, pinched between her numb fingers. She didn't know what she feared more, spending it, or what would happen when it was gone. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and miracles that come when life seems darkest, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. It truly helps stories like these reach more hearts. Emily's life hadn't always been this way. There were times not long ago when she baked cookies with her mother, laughed with her childhood friends in the sunlit streets, and dreamed of becoming an elementary school teacher. But life was unpredictable, a storm with no concern for dreams, and everything changed the day her mother fell ill. Months of hospital visits, bills piling like mountains, and a father who disappeared when responsibility grew too heavy left Emily fighting alone. When her mother passed, the grief hollowed her, yet she still tried to keep going. She got a job at a diner, rented a tiny room, and did her best to heal. But a sudden layoff a few weeks ago drained her savings quicker than she could react, and when her landlord demanded rent she couldn't pay, she found herself with no home, no job, and no one to turn to. She spent the last 2 nights at the city shelter, but a full crowd turned her away that morning. Now she was heading to a distant church rumored to take in the homeless for the holidays. She didn't know if they really would, but she had to try. The bus was her only lifeline, and the thin green bill in her hand her only chance of getting to warmth, safety, and maybe a hot meal. Cold seeped into her bones as she sat on the snow-dusted bench. She felt embarrassed even to be there, her dress wrinkled and thin, her cardigan worn at the sleeves, her boots years past their prime. Everything about her reflected struggle, the kind that made people look away instead of closer. As the snow thickened, Emily shivered, breathing into her cupped hands for warmth. The street was quiet except for the soft hum of distant traffic. But then, something unusual pierced the silence. Headlights, bright, white, and approaching slowly, illuminated the falling snow. A long black shape emerged from the storm. Not a bus. Not a taxi. A limousine, sleek, dark, and almost surreal against the slushy curb. Emily blinked, confused, gripping her $10 tighter. Limousines did not stop at bus shelters, and certainly not for homeless girls clutching their last bit of hope. Yet the car rolled to a graceful stop, its engine humming quietly like a giant animal waiting. Before Emily could stand, the driver's door opened and a tall man stepped out, not the chauffeur, but someone sharply dressed, imposing, and strikingly out of place in the snowy darkness. He wore a long charcoal coat, his shoulders broad, his expression chiseled and unreadable. Snowflakes dotted his hair and coat as he approached. For a moment, Emily's breath caught, not from fear, but the strange intensity of his presence. She had seen businessmen pass by the diner before, but this man had a quiet authority that drew the eye whether one wanted to look or not. And yet, despite his intimidating appearance, his eyes held something else. Something she couldn't name. His name, though she didn't know it yet, was Alexander Reed, a billionaire entrepreneur whose life, despite its wealth, was far colder than the December night around them. Alexander had built an empire of steel, hotels, and investments, but at the cost of warmth, connection, and almost every relationship he'd once cared about. Money surrounded him, but loneliness shadowed every step he took. Christmas Eve meant nothing to him anymore. Not since the car accident years ago that took his wife. The holiday only reminded him of what he'd lost. So he worked, traveled, and hid behind business. But on this night, something moved him to take a different route, a longer one. Fate, or perhaps something gentler, guided him to that exact bus stop. Emily didn't know any of that. All she saw was a stranger staring at her, examining the $10 bill in her trembling hands, the fear in her eyes, and the exhaustion clinging to her posture. She felt small beneath his gaze, and instinctively she looked down at her hands. She didn't want pity. She didn't want to be seen as broken. Minutes passed in silence, snow falling thicker, heavier. Emily began to hope he would simply return to the limousine and leave her unnoticed. But he didn't move. He stood there as if wrestling with an internal decision, his breath visible in the cold. And then, without a word, without stepping closer, he gently removed a leather wallet from his coat. Emily tensed. She didn't want charity. She didn't want anything that made her feel like a burden. But before he could open the wallet, headlights appeared from the opposite direction. The bus. Her bus. Its arrival jolted her heart. She stood quickly, clutching her last $10 with a determination that masked her fear. She stepped toward the curb, ignoring the man, ignoring the limousine, ignoring everything but the chance to change her situation, even if only slightly. The bus door opened, warm light pouring out. She approached with hope trembling inside her chest. But when she reached into her pocket for the $10, a sudden gust of winter wind tore it from her fingers. The bill fluttered upward, swirling like a mocking green bird, and landed in a slushy puddle near the limousine's tire. Emily gasped, scrambling after it. Her boots slipped, her knees hit the icy ground, and tears stung her eyes before she could stop them. She grabbed the bill, soaked and torn, just as the bus driver shook his head and closed the doors. The bus pulled away. Her last $10 was ruined. Her only chance was gone. Emily broke down, the cold, hunger, loneliness, and hopelessness crashing into her all at once. She curled her fingers around the wet bill as if squeezing hard enough might fix her life. Snow fell on her hair, her clothes, her hands. Everything felt heavy. Everything felt too much. But then, footsteps. Slow, steady, deliberate. Alexander approached her, not with pity, but with something deeper, concern, perhaps, or recognition of a pain he understood too well. And in that moment, something inside him shifted. He realized he couldn't walk away. Not tonight. Not when someone desperately needed a miracle he was capable of giving. Emily sensed him near and tensed, wiping her face quickly, trying to stand. But he offered a gloved hand, not forcefully, not insistently, just enough to steady her. She hesitated, then accepted his help, rising shakily to her feet. She expected judgment in his eyes. Instead, she found gentleness. Quiet, unexpected, and strange. He didn't ask questions. He didn't demand explanations. He simply gestured toward his limousine as the snow thickened, the cold worsening. Emily's first instinct was to refuse. She didn't know him. She didn't trust easily. But something about the sincerity in his expression broke past her defenses. Something told her this moment, this unlikely meeting, was no coincidence. She followed him. Inside the limousine, warmth enveloped her instantly. Plush leather seats, soft lights, and the faint scent of cedarwood made her feel as though she had stepped into another world. Alexander sat across from her, studying her quietly, not as a poor girl on a bus stop, but as a human being who needed help. Emily felt overwhelmed, embarrassed by her appearance, nervous in the presence of luxury that felt unreal. Yet Alexander didn't make her feel small. He offered her water, then a blanket the chauffeur handed through the partition. Emily wrapped herself in it, feeling heat return to her hands. She expected questions, interrogation, pity, but none came. The silence was strangely comforting. Eventually, when she gathered the courage, Emily told him everything, about her mother, her job, her eviction, her attempts to hold on despite losing so much.